Welcome to Clinician's Corner. Here, Molly and I will provide you with evidence-based insights and practical tools for addressing ultra-processed food addiction. This segment is designed for both individuals navigating recovery and professionals supporting clients through the treatment process. We will be bridging personal experience with clinical expertise to enhance understanding about the treatment of food addiction and the many pathways to recovery.
Each episode explores key topics such as the neurobiology of addiction, strategies for sustainable recovery, behavioral interventions, and the impact of diet trauma. We'll also discuss practical approaches for fostering self-compassion, managing setbacks, and building individualized, empowering eating practices.
Whether you are in recovery or a clinician working with clients, Clinician's Corner offers research-informed perspectives, real-world applications, and therapeutic tools to support long-term healing.
Join us the first Friday of each month for thoughtful conversations that equip you with the knowledge and strategies needed for meaningful progress in ultra-processed food addiction recovery.
Expert insights,
practical tools,
transforming recovery one conversation at a time. All right, welcome to Clinician's Corner. So nice to see you, Molly.
So nice to see you. Yay.
I thought today, something that's been coming up in Sweet Sobriety Group, and then we just did a Food Shrinks podcast on this, is kind of the feeling of being othered, where we don't really feel like we fit in, or maybe we don't feel seen or heard. And I thought we could start today's podcast with a bit of a quote from George Orwell, because I think this might speak to some people's experience even in recovery. So it is, the most terrible loneliness is not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood. The loneliness of standing in a crowded room, surrounded by people who do not see you, who do not hear you, and who do not know the true essence of who you are. And in that loneliness, you feel as though you are fading, disappearing into the background until you are nothing more than a ghost, a shadow of your former self.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I can relate to that personally from thinking about growing up, even in my own family, and not feeling seen or heard or understood. Everyone was medical. I didn't really, have any desire to go into that. And yet I was always trying to fit in or make myself like either my family culture or societal culture. And, now knowing now what I know about myself in neurodiversity, it also makes sense why I was like, I don't know if I fit in with all these people, even in school and in other social settings. But I can also empathize with feeling like that makes me feel so alone. And, even my first experience in AA, I never really felt like that I was seen or heard. But like in hindsight, I never really allowed myself to be seen or heard. I presented in a certain way that I thought would allow the group to like me, but I never really let them in. So of course they didn't see me. And of course I didn't belong because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable enough at that point.
Makes total sense. As you were sharing about thinking about your life, I was thinking about mine too. And I definitely had a parent, at least one parent, that purposely othered me. And I think then I almost took on that black sheep label, as survival. So there's this rebel in me, this, I really lean into it, almost that's fine. If I'm other, then I'm really going to lean into that other. And as I was listening to you kind of share, and then as you got older and then maybe you didn't let people in, I almost wonder how much of that was learned along the way, that wasn't always who you were, but that you learned it. Yeah. You learn that to be protective, because when we always put ourselves out there and then we're rejected or abandoned, that hurts. So then you just stop putting yourself out there. So there's still this pain because there's the otherness, but there's not otherness plus this active, you're not for me feeling, from others toward self. And I just wonder, you know what I mean? As you were saying, and I just wonder how many people that we work with maybe feel the same, that maybe they don't always remember being different or feeling different, but somewhere along the line it shifted, or maybe they were in some way and they stopped trying to reach out and connect with others in a meaningful way because it just was becoming so painful.
Mm-hmm. Well, you probably know even more than I do about attachment issues. And like, you can go from like secure attachment to insecure to secure again, right? Like it doesn't, is that.
So secure attachment is a very specific sort of attachment where when you're growing up, that term really is defined by this idea of like when you're growing up, you form attachment with like the people who are taking care of you. You know what I mean? Like there's trust. You learn as an infant, if I cry, I'm going to be fed, my diaper is going to be changed, I'm going to be picked up, whatever it is. And you learn through like bids for attention, bids for needs to be met, that those needs are met. And research shows actually that adults only have to get it like correct like 30% of the time. Like the bar is pretty low, honestly. It's very low in order for there to be this secure attachment. So you don't necessarily go from this secure attachment to an insecure attachment. Insecure attachments can be formed along the way, and you can go back to a secure attachment, but it's an earned secure attachment, which is a bit different than when you're growing up and your brain is the default mode becomes a secure
the way
attachment.
that you're wired.
Yeah. Right, because people go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think I probably in my own, life did have a lot of secure attachment. And then I had some really insecure relationship attachments. And then that also shifted that I didn't really feel like I would be a secure attachment person anymore, which also was like people then seeing the world differently, right? That I don't belong and that, I'd rather die than be vulnerable.
Yeah. So you had some experiences that then shaped, right? So where maybe you were a trusting person, you were willing to be vulnerable, you were willing to like believe in the good in people, whatever it was. And then you trusted that. And then that person violated that trust. And maybe somewhere in your brain, you were like, oh, they're a person and they're allowed to make mistakes and I'm going to give a second chance. And then you gave them another chance and then they hurt you again in some way. And like, maybe you kept convincing yourself to let them try again or whatever it might be. But yeah, then that can erode your self-trust. So while you maybe the default is the secure attachment place, you learn to not trust that others won't hurt you.
Right. And if you come from an insecure attachment, what does that look like?
Yeah. So those attachment styles are broken down into a couple different ones. So there's avoidant attachment. So that's where, this might be somebody who's warm in the beginning in a relationship, but very quickly maybe starts to feel distant. They might be referred to as like a runner, like, oh, why won't you commit to taking me out on Friday night? Or, hey, we really need to talk about this really important thing. But every time we sit down to talk about it, you start a fight. And then that gives you permission to leave in some way. There's anxious attachment. So that person is more like maybe like the chaser. This might be where you get the word codependency thrown around a bit. But this is the person that really needs that external validation. And so if they're very attuned to when people start to distance themselves. And so they might be the ones that like are like the stage 5 clingers, is what I call my dog. He's definitely anxious attached in that it's just like that constant, like, love me, don't leave me feeling. And then there is a mix of the two where somebody can have that disorganized attachment and it can feel like, I hate you, don't leave me. So that push, pull. So there are lots of different types of attachment styles. And the thing is that if you didn't start out with a secure attachment, that doesn't mean that you can't, right? You can get the earned secure attachment. And if you did, and you start to find yourself in a different sort of attachment stage in a different relationship, you can get back to that secure attachment. It's not like set in stone. Please, nobody think, oh my gosh, I'm hearing myself. I'm the anxious attacher. My life is over. How do I get over that? There are lots of ways to work through it, but I think it's really important to talk about it because when we think about that idea of belongingness and how we connect with others, if we are one of the disorganized types or insecure types, it's harder than, like you were saying, to want to be vulnerable. So like maybe you're an avoidant. I don't know. I don't really want to put a label on you, but just like based on that, like not really wanting to be vulnerable, but I identify with that.
I think I was. Yeah, I think I was for sure. And I think a lot of people coming into recovery can be. And I thought it was important to talk about these attachment styles because I do think they affect belonging, right? So because we know like the definition of belonging is feeling comfortable and happy in a particular situation or with a group of people and being treated as a full member of the group. And that feeling of belonging is about this emotional state we have, how connected I feel and how valued I feel. The experience of belonging is then having these interactions and relationships that validate these feelings. But if I'm somebody who maybe has insecure attachment, I may be not comfortable with being vulnerable enough to connect and let people in. And so then I may feel not part of. And this can, happen in, I think, regular society as anyone in recovery enters. Now we are different, right? We don't eat the things that other people do, or maybe drink the things or, smoke the things our friends used to smoke. So that can amplify the feeling of othered. And then we can also even feel othered in recovery groups if we are still a little scared, or maybe we have that experience of this is not safe.
Yeah, right. Which is really unfortunate because belongingness really is important when it comes to nervous system regulation. And you and I talk about nervous system regulation all the time, that it goes back to that. So if we find ourselves in those positions and we're not joining groups or feeling a part of, then we have that extra hurdle of our nervous systems maybe are not getting that co-regulation from our peers or people that we love, whomever it might be. And so our recovery journey will be just a bit more complicated, and it can get really, it becomes grueling when you're on your own over and over and over again. And so, yeah, like you were saying, it's like it's really important that we find a way to have that belonging. And even within group, like you said, even if you do somehow find it in you to be a joiner or whatever it might be, sometimes those groups then have, cliques or belief systems or whatever that don't necessarily align with who you are as a person. And this is where I go back to I think for me, like I was saying, I really have leaned into that black sheep. I really kind of wear that as an identity now. It's become my protection versus what was always seen and used against me, weaponized almost as a weakness. But that can also get me into trouble, because then what that means is that people often feel connected to me, but I don't feel connected to them.
Right.
Yeah. So we have to be really conscious of, am I able to show up as my true, genuine, authentic self? Am I willing and able to be vulnerable about these certain things, whether it be what I'm eating or not, what I'm drinking or not, what I'm smoking or not? And how can I make that work for me so that I can get what I need from this group or this individual person? Am I getting co-regulation in a way that works for me and my nervous system and moves me along on my healing path? Or does it continue to keep that cycle going where I'm feeling constantly do they like me? Do they not like me? Am I included? Am I not included?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think feeling of belonging can shift over time, right? Even within group dynamics. I think it can happen within families too, or interpersonal relationships with friends. So I thought it might be helpful to talk about kind of the 6 areas where people can get belonging, because I think, we all really understand that interpersonal relationships, right? I think the research said that 85% people said friends and family or a partner is where they found their sense of belonging. But there was also an equal amount of people that found stuff within music, within connecting TV shows, within their culture. So, not everyone is going to connect in the same way. I think this could be nervous system. This can be cultural. This can be, just societal. So I thought it would be important to talk about just 6 ways, or 6 basically avenues of belonging that people could explore. So first one is the one we talked about, the interpersonal relationships. So those deep, meaningful relationships with friends and family and partners, where you have that emotional support, validation, and like the sense of being known and accepted. And so again, here, I think we're looking at quality over quantity. It's not about the number of friends. It's about who can I have like a long, heartfelt conversation with, and I leave and I really feel heard in that situation.
And anecdotally, I would say, because I don't have research literature to back this up, though if I went looking, I could probably find it. But anecdotally speaking, no matter what population I was working with, whether it be in criminal justice, in sexual assault, in just private practice in general, the people who, quote, got better, whatever that means to them, were the ones who had quality support, not quantity of. I mean, I've seen that for 2 decades now. So I agree with that point 100%.
Yeah. Then the next one is collective experiences. So those are from participating in a group activity, maybe a movement or a tradition that creates some kind of shared meaning or identity. So, maybe you are marching for a protest. Maybe you are taking part in a cultural or religious ceremony that connects you to generations before, or you are, this is just even people singing in a choir together. It could also be potentially a recovery group, right? As well. So that's just being involved in a collective experience. The other one that I thought was really interesting was casual encounters. So brief everyday interactions, like with the Starbucks barista or the grocery store attendant, while they are not deep, they remind us that we're part of this shared world together. So it might just be like, I walk my road every single day and like, I just wave, and I started this tradition of just waving. And like, there's lots of people on this road that I probably wouldn't know face to face, but I know their car, and they wave every single day. And it's just kind of a part of being a bigger thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something really important there that you just pointed out is that belongingness isn't about fitting in. It's really about being seen and accepted as you are. And so many of our clients struggle to accept themselves as they are because they have had those experiences from the messages, you're not okay, you're not okay, you're not okay. So even starting, like you were saying, these brief encounters, these kind of like, their acquaintances at most probably, right? Like assuming we know their name, whatever, but even to have, I've worked as a barista, I've waited tables, all of that. And maybe I didn't know my regulars by name, but I knew their order. I knew to like ask them how they, I waited tables at the same restaurant for 4 years. So I did get to know some of my regulars by first name. And so, yeah, like just like having that belongingness or that, relationship where people are happy to see you. You're happy to see them. They're asking you how you're doing. They're interested in, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's surfacey stuff compared to some of those deeper relationships, that can be that nice kind of like baby step into this part of recovery.
Right. And it's, again, all we're trying to say is like, there's never going to be a time when it's your first like recovery group or situation and you're going to be like, I belong. Like you may like kind of feel that, but belonging is really about cultivating. So it's something you have to do over time, and it's something you practice. And as you engage more, the belonging, I think the sense of belonging enhances and you start to feel more a part of. I think very rarely, even in sweet sobriety, somebody joined on the first day and was like, oh, I belong. But like as they practice sharing, as they practice, reaching out to another individual in group and like starting to like test the waters, then they start to feel more a part of, they start to be more, they feel valued and they feel more connected. And that's what it's about. So, yeah.
And even what you were saying earlier about like, sometimes it's not our family members, sometimes it's not some of these other groups, it's about those boundaries too. And knowing that, hey, come and join a group like Sweet Sobriety or a 12-step group or, whatever else is out there. But belongingness is also about knowing like that doesn't belong to you either. Like having those boundaries of like, ooh, this feels wrong for me. And that giving yourself permission that it's okay to actually leave that too. Or maybe you've been in a group for a while, and we've certainly seen this with our members too. And I'm all about it. Like this is actually what I cheer people on to do is, the hope is that people do outgrow. You know what I mean? Like I want people to outgrow what we're doing. That means that you are healing And so to give yourself permission to have those boundaries.
Yeah. So the next three ways are more non-traditional ways, I think. So first one is symbolic bonds, meaning that it doesn't require direct interaction. Sometimes we feel connected through a shared identity, symbols or common experiences. Again, this can be a recovery community. It can be cultural heritage. It can be wearing your favorite sports team jersey and bonding with fans, or, going up and like getting a recovery chip that symbolizes our journey. So symbolic bonds are definitely another way that people can feel or cultivate belonging.
Yeah. I call it letting your freak flag fly, and it's not necessarily that you've got a freak flag, but when we're willing to kind of like wear those symbols or engage in those symbols, it's kind of like a beacon for others to know like, hey, I'm a safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And then the next one is esteem building. So belonging can just come from feeling valued or capable. So when our contributions are recognized, we start to see an impact and we feel connected to others in meaningful ways. So that might be, a teacher or telling a student their hard work made a difference. Maybe you volunteer and you got gratitude from the community, or maybe you did a presentation and you got positive feedback. So these things build esteem. It makes us feel valued and we feel like more a part of and a better fit within.
Yeah. And I think that really plays into that idea of like getting outside of ourselves. Because I think when we don't feel like we belong, we can get really caught up in all of the things that make us feel other, and when we do things like volunteer or advocacy or tutoring, whatever it might be, like somehow we're giving back or paying it forward, or, in 12-step groups, they call it service work. It does. It gets you outside of yourself and you start to see your world from a different perspective, like through a different lens, and you can start to see how you belong in a different way. So belongingness is not always going to mean that whoever you're with knows who you are to your very core and accepts you for everything you are and everything you aren't at your very core. Sometimes belongingness has to do with what group am I interacting with? In what situation am I interacting in, with them, kind of deal. And so, yeah, I really love that idea of getting outside of yourself and like just thinking about others. Not that people listening and who feel other don't think about others, but it's like a different way of thinking about others.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And then the last one is contemplative practices. So again, something that's not external, but it's about feeling connected to yourself, nature, or a greater sense of purpose through reflection or mindfulness, right? So maybe you're meditating in nature, feeling a sense of peace or unity with the world. Maybe you're journaling about your personal growth or like recognizing your own worth. Maybe it's a moment of spiritual connection during like a deep breathing or a gratitude practice. But I would say I feel like this deep sense of connection and belonging every time I'm in the forest.
Agreed. Same, right? It doesn't matter if you're with other people or not. It's just like, you're just like loved and in like almost like embraced or enveloped, by nature. It almost feels so filling or satisfying, content. I'm not sure exactly what the word is. I just feel really like full internally, that it's like, I don't really care that there's nobody else around because I've got me, or I'm like sending you video messages or something where, there's some sort of like, sometimes I want to share it with somebody who's really important to me, but I don't necessarily mind that there's nobody else around.
No. I love that you said that too about sending something to someone, when you're like, every time I get something from you, I'm like, oh, I see Molly in what you send me, because it like either makes me laugh or I'm like, this is so Molly, right? It's like, and it's another way of letting me see you. And this is again, if what the research says about enhancing belonging is that, if you're feeling like you don't belong, is there a way you can increase some vulnerability and authenticity? So, can you share a personal story? Personal stories really foster deep, like connections. So, maybe something like where you've been like, oh, I've been kind of a little bit nervous to share. Is this the time? And see, is it going to like impact your connection to the group? I think like from what I've heard from clients, when they share that thing in group that they were so scared to share, it's like, oh, then this person said they felt that way. And that person said they felt that way. And I was like, oh, like I just needed to start it. And then all of a sudden there was all these other people who were also afraid to say that thing. So I think that is also like just taking that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's probably the biggest ask of all of this is that willingness, can you take that risk? And maybe you're not ready to jump headfirst off the cliff. Maybe it is some of these more kind of like baby step kind of ways, but you're right. In my experience running groups again in 2 decades of like lots of different populations, men, women, people who have done some pretty heinous things to like people who've been the victims of those heinous things and like everybody in between. It really only takes one person because it's never just one person who has that thought or that feeling or that experience. There is always somebody else that's just like, oh, saying that. Thank you so much for saying that because now I feel seen. I feel less alone. It's that common humanity when we talk about self-compassion and building self-compassion, which is huge.
Yeah, so true too. It's like, and I'm not saying that, any of the people who shared these big things did it in their first meeting, right? They got to the point where they were like, yeah, I feel like I might be ready, or this has been on my heart to share for a while. And like each group, I'm like thinking about doing it and then I don't do it. And then one day get the courage, right? So, but yeah, make sure that, you're ready. That is very important. And like, if you might never feel quite ready enough. So know when you need to push yourself too.
Yeah. And I think that's the other important aspect, I think, of belongingness, maybe more of the darker side that we should probably touch on briefly is I know for me personally, I've had a few times in my life where it's been very dark. I've been deeply suicidal, and it did stem from this place of like, I am so different that my family members would be better off if I didn't exist. And this was years before kids, that kind of thing. It's been a long time since I've been in that place, but it's very easy for me to remember, probably because, it's something that once it's there, it's very easy to kind of flirt with that line a little bit when things are going not awesome, right? For one reason or another. And so I think, I just want to put it out there that if you are a person who is feeling like you're the black sheep or like you're othered, like you are not seen for who you are, and if you are being seen, you're feeling unaccepted, that there are people out there who want to know you. There are people out there who want to hear your story. And not because they want to use it against you, but because they want you to know that they feel the same way too, because they don't want you to walk through that darkness alone. And so again, like you were saying, it's like that willingness to just take that risk, to just let your freak flag fly a little bit, or look for somebody else's flag that you identify with, and get to know them at your pace to make sure that they're a safe person for you to like reveal yourself to. But again, you don't have to show them your deepest, darkest shadow self day one. You can like start with the barista, like, hey, we're just having, it could be like that. Like I see him every day on my walk. So I'm going to smile and say hi and how are you? And keep walking. And maybe the next time we're going to have a chat about our dogs. And then, sometime down the road, we're going to walk our dogs together. And then eventually, and then it just kind of grows from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's, I think that is the key, right? Even the research on belonging says like, we often assume we're like an outsider when in reality, many people feel the same way. So you're walking by that person with the dog, they're thinking the same thing. They're like, oh, do I smile? Do I wave? I don't know. They seem nice. I see them every day. Like you're not just the only one thinking that. And so also like, if you're in a group and you're wondering that, I'm sure many people are also feeling that same thing. And, even thinking like, I do belong here and I'm just still learning how to feel it. Because again, we need to practice belonging. This doesn't always come naturally, specifically if we have been in groups or situations where it wasn't the right fit, or we were trying to make ourselves fit and losing ourselves in the process of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I think I love about the culture of sweet sobriety so much, is that we just want you to come exactly as you are. Like there's no other expectation. Please just come as you are. And even if what people are saying isn't landing in that first meeting, come to another one, right? Like different people come to different meetings because they're on different days of the week at different times of the day, that kind of thing. But also, like, I think belongingness isn't always about having shared experiences necessarily. It could also just be because somebody truly just loves me for who I am, period. Right. And like, sometimes that's it. Maybe somebody is in group because they're trying to overcome bulimia, and somebody else is in group and they've got, their food addiction, mostly on a good track. And now they're trying to get off screens, or whatever. Like, the person with that isn't necessarily on the surface the same thing, but when we can all show up and just like share this space and hold hope and love people through their stuff and give them grace. And when we can do that for ourselves, it's like that belongingness grows. And it makes me think of like the rat park kind of, experiment of, yeah, your face lit up. What were you going to say?
I know. I like it. Yeah. No, just about, well, if anyone doesn't know, it's like these rats were in like isolation, and then they were using, was it drugs or sugar? I can't remember.
They've done it with both cocaine and
Yeah. And then, when they were put in community, they stopped using the substances because, they were finding belonging or connection. And they no longer needed the substance to like get what they thought was belonging or connection, probably just more escape or anything numb, who knows, to like that pain. But yeah, no, I agree. So what if I'm an introvert?
Yeah. I mean, it might surprise people to know this, but I would say I'm an introvert. I mean, the thing is like introversion has nothing to do with connecting with others and belongingness. Introversion and extroversion are really like kind of like how we present to the bigger, wider world and how you get your energy. So like, even as an introvert, I do still get my energy from people. I just really need my alone time too, where extroverts get their energy, like they get their go juice by talking to all these people and like, go, and, whatever. But it has nothing to do with like connection, because I would argue I know quite a few extroverts and I don't know that they connect very deeply with people, right? It's more, not that you don't connect deeply with people, but you're not connecting deeply with all 800 people that you're encountering in a day that are giving you energy.
No, exactly. I could be like, whoa, we just had like the best time. We talked to like so many people, but like that's not actually an interpersonal relationship to me. Like the quality one-on-one time I get to spend with you in the room after we've just been at this big thing, that is where, again, it's about quality over quantity. And I think like knowing yourself well is like, okay, then maybe you are somebody who needs to like go for a walk in nature or engage in like lower energy social activities, like having a coffee with somebody like one-to-one, right? Where it's just a little bit more intimate. It's not so, overstimulated.
Well, exactly. And the risk is a lot smaller one-to-one, right? So if I'm with you and we've never met before and I say something out of left field, maybe I think it's going to be out of left field, or, maybe it's like, oh, I believe in this conspiracy or something, right? Because I'm into stuff, I'm into stuff. Like one-to-one, yes, that's scary, but the risk of rejection is one person. Where like when I'm in a group of people, and so like this is me outing myself big time, but I can get really passionate about things. I get lost in it because I am so passionate about it. And I am so passionate about people, right? And often my passions are around some sort of advocacy, social justice kind of thing. And so then it will never fail. We'll be in a meeting with like 4 people. And afterwards I will have to like message you and be like, what did I just do? They're going to
What
think I'm
happened there?
crazy. Are you sure you
Right.
want to
And
be
I'm
attached
like,
to me?
it's totally fine. Like it was not inappropriate.
Right. Right. But that's where the risk starts to increase. So again, I can see we're like going to a group and wanting to share, and so I think for those people, again, introvert, extrovert, whatever, at the end of the day, do what makes you feel safe. Go to a meeting, don't come on camera. Now, if it's a requirement, I know some online meetings require that, then be on camera, but don't share, get to know people before and then before you're willing to like share something super vulnerable, but maybe just start with like, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is my first group, or my first group that I'm sharing.
We all remember that first time we went to that first meeting and said anything out loud.
Yeah. Right. Because then it was just like, now I'm in my guilt. Now I'm in my shame.
Yes,
now I'm in my whole body's hot.
Though.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like my face is bright red. Can everybody see this face?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm a crier. Like my anxiety shows up as crying. I either completely dissociate, which Clarissa has definitely seen me do that, where she's like, whoa, hello. You. I'm like, oh, I'm checked out because this is too much, or it's too much. And it's like literally leaking out of my face. I've been in accidents. I've been in like confrontations, that kind of thing. And people are like, are you okay? Because I'm crying. And I'm like, yeah, like my body's just releasing energy. Like I'm not sad. I'm not whatever. It's just, I'm crying because there's all this like anxious, like whatever that needs to go somewhere. So, I think the thing is like, you have to be willing to know that those are outcomes that could happen, and are those costs worth the benefit in the long run? If we go into this with our expectations unmanaged and we think, oh, the first time I share, it's going to be amazing, or the first time I reach out to this one person, we're going to definitely connect and it's going to be like the best, we may be setting ourselves up for that abandonment and rejection, right? We may not be setting ourselves up for success. And so I think
just tell you that I do that on every podcast with every guest. I'm like, oh, we're probably going to be friends by the end of this podcast. And like,
I think that's a beautiful way to go into it. And I'm the skeptic.
Guests are not interested.
No, absolutely. But what's so lovely about that is like, I love that about you. And I go into every interaction of like, all right, how's this person going to hurt me? I better test all the buttons.
Interesting. Yeah.
I got to test all the buttons, but I know that you're there, right? I know that Clarissa believes in pronoia, that the universe is conspiring for her. And not that I'm paranoid, the opposite, but that I am a little more like, are we sure? Are we sure?
Cautious is okay to be.
And that's okay. That's okay. Again, it doesn't mean that you deserve not to belong or that you're any less worthy of belongingness. It just means that maybe I have to work harder to make sure that you feel that you or you know what I mean? Like that I'm conveying to you that you feel that way, that I want to make sure. I think that's the other piece of belonging too, right? It's not just about us, it's about the other person. And I think about that in relationship, I think about you, I think about my husband, again, like those close interpersonal relationships. And I'm always like, oh God, do they know how much I appreciate them? Do they know how much I love them? Do they know how much, no matter what goes down, that like I'm their ride or die, like I think that that's the other aspect of belonging, is that if I want to feel like I belong, I also need to put in like the effort to make sure that people know that I accept them for who they are, where they are, that kind of thing too, that it can't always be that, oh, I've been othered. And so it's on that group then to make me feel a part of, because that's you giving away your power without consent. That is you continuing that cycle of being othered, because if you're always giving that away, that means that you're defining your worthiness of belonging based on what they've decided. You also get to have a say in that. And I think that's a really important piece of this too. Going back to that idea of boundaries and saying, this looked good on the surface, but the longer it goes on, it's not for me for one reason or another.
Yeah. And I guess in order to wrap up our conversation today, I want to focus specifically about belonging. Anyone who's like on this journey and maybe they are not feeling like they're belonging in food addiction recovery, because I want to give those people the courage to stay true to themselves, even in the face of misunderstanding, because the truth is not everyone's going to understand your journey, right? Some people are going to question your choices. They're going to be like, just have one bite, or you're being too extreme. And others may make you feel different because you're doing things different than they are. And in those moments, it might feel like, in the quote, like you're fading into the ghost in the crowded room, but you're not alone. Your journey is valid. Recovery isn't about pleasing other people to fit into the mold. It's really honoring what you know is right for you and recognize like your healing, your choices, your boundaries are not up for debate, and hold on to your essence in this. The world may not fully understand it yet, but they will.
Yeah. And I would say the same then to those people who maybe come to places like Sweet Sobriety or, Sugar Free for Life, the Facebook group, or, whatever, like they're just maybe they're just experimenting with like, I'm willing to like experiment with letting go of sugar, but I don't know if I'm a food addict. And knowing that like you still belong in those rooms, or that there are rooms in which you will feel that you belong. And if people are in those groups saying you don't belong because you're not like us, one of us is not like the other, then that's okay. Then you go find that space because your journey is still your journey. You do not have to qualify. Yeah. You don't have to justify your existence. You don't have to justify your needs. Like you still get to, same as what you were saying to the people who are like on the journey too. And like with family members or friends who don't understand, the same can be true for like, it's okay if you're questioning whether or not food addiction is your story. Clearly something is going on, that you are seeking healing, that you are seeking recovery, that you are seeking education and support and whatever those things might be. Just keep showing up for you. Keep showing up for you, because you will find the people who make you feel like you belong, and you will find the people that you want to make sure they know they belong.
Yeah, we promise you those people exist. Your community is out there. They're going to say, I see you, I understand, and I'm here. It may just take some time to find them, and it may require you walking away from relationships that don't support your healing. It may even mean you stand alone for a little while, but keep that essence alive. As I think, Molly, you always say, don't dim your light to make others comfortable. Don't trade your truth for that temporary acceptance, because being in those places and being misunderstood is super painful. So trust your path, because you are worthy of belonging exactly as you are.
100%. Oh.
And if they want to reach out, where do they? I never remember this email either.
Yeah. I think it's because I've been repeating our other emails. And I'm like, What is it? No, I'm kidding. I know what it is. It is foodjunkiespodcast@gmail.com. You can send us an email there.
Yeah, we want to know. We want to hear from you. We want you to know if there's topics you want us to cover on Clinician's Corner, and any questions you have, because we love your feedback and we love hearing from you.
100%. And if you have thoughts on this topic of belongingness, especially, let us know, because we can expand on it. We can talk about other aspects of it. And, it's always good to hear that these land. And if they don't, we'll move on.
Yeah. We'll move through it.
We're here for you, not for us. So
not for us. And with that, we'll see you next month, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group. I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.